welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. We've really enjoyed having you all here today. So we are going to do a short keynote with Chef Brad. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to, as we go, I'll put some of the raffle tickets on each table with some pens, and you can just pass them back, and we'll just collect them at the end. And we'll turn it over to Chef Brad. So thank you.
Perfect. Well, it's really, really good to be here. So if you don't know who I am, I'm a native of Arizona, and I moved up here about 5 or 6 years ago. And the last 2 years have been kind of a blessing and a challenge. About 2 years ago, I was riding on the Murdoch Trail, and I crossed over a road, and I got slammed by a car going 45 miles an hour. And it just kind of put me out of commission for a while. But what do you do when you can't work? You write a book. So I wrote a book. And I'm sorry, I'm out of copies right now. I have one copy for Shireen, but you can find it on Amazon. And I highly recommend it. The title is Food is Love, Love is Food. And that's what we're going to talk about for a minute. And everything we were talking about right before we started is what this book is about. I am passionate about food and how food is so powerful. So I'm also passionate about connecting and how food just really connects people. So the book, I wasn't going to put recipes in the book at all, because I have recipe books out there, and I thought, I don't want to do another recipe book. And I went to a funeral last year, and I was surrounded by angels on the other side, and it was my family. I could hear them and feel them around me, and they said, you really need to put recipes in this book. I was like, okay, and they gave me a list of recipes. I was like, okay. And then they said, don't just put the recipes in, you have to tell the story about the recipe. It's like, okay. And then the parting words to me were, food has the power like nothing else to connect past, present, and future generations. Food is so powerful how it connects. I was telling a story a while back to a woman, and she said, oh my goodness. She said, my grandparents met in England on their mission. And my grandmother used to always make Yorkshire pudding. Do y'all know what Yorkshire pudding is? Yeah? It's beautiful. Well, the traditional Yorkshire pudding is where they put this dough underneath the roast, and as the roast dripped the fat down, it would cook the dough, and that's what they called Yorkshire pudding. It was a bread with the drippings of the meat. Doesn't that sound great? Anyway, her grandmother made that for them for years, and then her grandmother died. And her and her husband were going on a trip to England, and she said she remembered her grandmother's Yorkshire pudding, and she told her husband, when we go to England, we're going to eat Yorkshire pudding. And so she said, one morning they walked out of their hotel, and the little cafe over there, they walked out just as a man put a sign in the window, today's special Yorkshire pudding. And she said, we went in and sat down, and she said, Brad, I kid you not, it felt like my grandmother was right there with us eating that pudding. And that's what food does. It just has this wonderful power of bringing memories to our mind and also connecting people. So my book is written in 4 parts. Part 1 is our personal relationship with food. And we all have to have some kind of relationship with food. My wife, her philosophy is food is she eats to stay alive. And my philosophy is I live to eat. 2 totally different philosophies. She said one time, when I die, my world is not going to have food. And I said, well, apparently we'll be in different worlds, because my world will be all about food. It's going to be all about food. So
taking takeout from yours.
There you go. Exactly. So then part 2 is one of my favorite parts of the book. It's about families and the power in feeding our families and taking the time to feed our families. A lot of the families now, we were talking about this earlier, how people are just so busy now, they don't take the time to cook. And we're losing the power of that. Even the simple thing of making homemade bread. There was a study that came out of BYU a few years ago, and it said that families where the children grow up in a home where bread is baked, and I'm really not trying to make you feel guilty if you don't make bread. Well, actually I am trying to make you feel guilty if you don't make bread. But they said children that grow up in a family where there's homemade bread do better in all parts of their life, emotionally, socially. And I thought about that. Why on earth would that make a difference in a child's life? And this is what I came up with. If you could put a name to the smell of bread, it would be love. And I think that when children smell bread in the home, they just feel loved. Don't you think? Yeah. To me, oh my goodness, I love the smell of homemade bread. And this is one of the stories I tell in the book is about my mom. My mom made bread every Monday, but she did it for economical reasons back then. It was cheaper to feed her family with homemade bread. It literally took her 5 to 6 hours to make 7 or 8 loaves of bread. She didn't have the modern convenience of mixers like we have now. She made it all by hand. She had a great big stainless steel bowl. She kneaded it by hand, and then you let it rise, you punch it down, you let it rise, you put it in your bread pans, you let it rise, and then you bake it. And growing up, if we came home and there wasn't homemade bread, something was up on that Monday. Something was wrong in the world if we didn't have homemade bread. It became a part of our life. But my mother, I am certain my mother never, ever considered the long-term effects of what she was doing that day. It was a chore. It was something she had to do. And she never thought about, how are my actions affecting my children for the rest of their life? And she never once entered her mind, oh, my darling son Brad is one day going to grow up and teach literally tens of thousands or more women how to make bread. That never entered her mind. But that's what her actions did. Her making the choice to bake bread and cook for her family, the long-term effects of that is I have been able to influence literally hundreds of thousands of people with something that she did that she thought was a chore. And sometimes we get so caught up in life is too busy that we don't take the time to do the things that matter most. So when my children were growing up, I taught them how to make homemade bread, right? And so one day, my 12-year-old boy walks in the kitchen and he says, Dad, I want to make homemade bread today. I was like, okay. He's 12 years old. He's never really gone through the process. He's just been in the kitchen when I made the bread, right? So I put everything out on the counter and I said, okay, it's all ready to go. I'll see you later. He said, what? You said you wanted to do it by yourself. I'm leaving. I'll see you in a few hours. So I left. I came back a few hours later, and I walked into the kitchen, and I want to tell you, it literally looked like a slurry bomb had gone off in my kitchen. And we had a little tiny kitchen, but there was even flour on the ceiling. It was a mess. And I burst into tears, but it wasn't because of the bomb. It was because on the counter were 5 loaves of absolutely perfect bread. In fact, when my wife looked at that bread, she told me, she said, I'm not making bread anymore. I can't compete with a 12-year-old boy. I'm not going to do it anymore. So the story doesn't end there. About a year later, my neighbor comes down, my best friend, he comes down and he says, could you come over and teach me how to make homemade bread today? And I was like, oh, darn, I just don't have time. And my little 12-year-old son, 13 now, he says, Brother Lindsay, I'll come and teach you how to make bread. And I looked at Brother Lindsay, do you trust this boy? And he was like, absolutely, come on. So my son went down and taught this older man how to make homemade bread. He was impossible to live with after that, because every time my friend would bring us a loaf of bread, my son was like, I taught him everything he knows. The story doesn't end there. So this friend that he taught how to make bread, they would go out on Saturday mornings and they would go paintball gun shooting, which I can't imagine a worse sport, getting hit by those. I can't imagine anything worse. But my son loved it. So he comes home to me and he says, Dad, I need a new paintball gun. I was like, okay, no problem. How much? Well, Dad, the one I want's about $150. I was like, well, buddy, figure out how to pay for it, because I'm not going to. So what do? He goes in the kitchen, and for like 4 or 5 weeks, he makes bread every week and sells it to the neighbors until he earns enough money to buy his gun. And my wife was like, well, it's not going to last. It's like, I don't care if it doesn't last or not. He's learned something. And so then I got the letter that every missionary dad loves. I got a letter of him making homemade bread for his investigators. So that's what it's all about when we take the time to teach our children. I'll tell you a really tragic story about that. I might cry when I tell you the story, but my mom was a great cook. I mean, she was a fabulous cook. My grandpa owned restaurants. But she never, ever once took the time to teach us anything. I mean, the only thing she allowed us in the kitchen for was to clean up after she cooked. That was it. She never took the time to explain how she did anything. She was always too busy. She was a working mom. She was too busy. So here I am. I got called to be a missionary for the church. And I go out in the mission field. And one of the comfort foods that I loved was her hamburger gravy over bread, right? How many of you have had hamburger gravy? There's nothing like it. It's amazing, right? And so my first missionary companion, I wanted to feed him a really wonderful lunch. And I said, okay, you go in the other room. I'm going to fix lunch today. And I didn't know how to do it, but I remember watching my mom. And this is what my mom would do. She had a mason jar, and she'd put flour and milk and salt and pepper in the mason jar. And she would shake it up and pour it over the ground beef. And somehow she'd come up with this beautiful hamburger gravy. So I found a mason jar in our apartment, and I filled it with flour and milk and salt and pepper, and shook it up really good. And I had this pan of really greasy hamburger, really hot, frying. And I took that jar of that mixture that I had mixed up. I poured it over the hamburger, and it immediately turned into this big glue ball. Just a solid ball. And here's my companion. Is lunch about ready? Yeah, it's coming. And I was just panicking. I didn't know what to do. So you know whose fault that was? My mother's. She should have taken the time to teach me how to do a simple thing like making gravy. Did my children, when my children were 2, they knew how to make gravy. I wasn't going to have them go through that experience. So I want to just tell you just a little story. It sounds like it was always magical in my kitchen at home, but I had to go through that process of learning. I remember I work in the food and beverage industry, and my wife, when we got married, she said, why should I cook? I married a chef, right? So she never cooks. And so I would come home, and she homeschooled too. So I would come home after working with food all day long and walk into a kitchen. And I really didn't mind cooking dinner, but you know what I really did mind? That I had to clean the entire kitchen up before I could cook dinner. And then, not only that, you cook a dinner, and what happens most of the time? Half of the family doesn't even like what you cook, and they're complaining. And that cycle, and I couldn't understand. I would walk home, and I would get angry, and I would be yelling and screaming, and my wife would say, you gotta calm down. And it's like, well, why don't you just clean the kitchen before I get home? It's so simple, but they didn't get it, right? And it got to where when I would come home, and I'm really embarrassed to say this, but when I'd come home, my family would run and hide because they were afraid of what Dad, and it's like, really? Can't you just clean the kitchen? That's all I'm asking. Anyway, it was pretty bad, I have to admit. It wasn't, but I learned a beautiful lesson, and it changed like that from night to day in our kitchen. I learned that the moment you step into the kitchen, no matter the mess, to cook a meal for your family, you're performing Christ-like service. And I learned how the atonement of Jesus Christ just isn't about sin. It's about service. But just like sin, we all know how sin works, right? You do something wrong, you repent, you tap into Christ, He lifts you up above it, and you're okay, right? The same thing applies with feeding your families. You have to tap into the power source. Once you tap into this power source, it lifts you up to the task, and you find joy in feeding your families. And this is how it turned out in our home. I was glad it happened when my children were little, because they have beautiful memories now of a much happier dad in the kitchen. But my sons would come home at like 10:30 at night. I was in bed, there'd be a knock on my bedroom door. Hey, Pops, I got a few of my bros out in the kitchen. Can you come out and feed us dinner? And I would get up and walk in the kitchen, and a few of their bros were like 15 of their buddies were there, and they wanted me to feed them at 10:30 at night. It was beautiful. I loved it. And I realized, oh my goodness, they're eating my food. I can pretty much tell them whatever I want, can't I? So they would have a PPI. How's your scripture study? How's it going with the girls? Are you treating them right? And they must have loved it because they kept coming back. But the point I'm trying to make is I went from our home being a place of anger over something so beautiful to it being something really beautiful. And I have learned now, and my kids laugh at me now. I'll say, because I've taught them that principle. When you step in the kitchen, you're performing Christ-like service. So every now and then I'll say, hey, you guys want to help me in the kitchen? They'll say, what, Dad, you need help? You know you're performing Christ-like service. It's beautiful, though. It's beautiful. So the point of part 2 is helping us understand that it is important that our children see us cooking. It is important that they see their moms in the kitchen. I remember a few years ago I was coaching a family, and the children, they told me, I said, what do you need from your mom? They said, oh, Chef Brad, we want to see our mom cooking for us in the kitchen, because they literally ate out every single night of the week. They would eat out. And then I asked one of her friends, I said, what do they do on Sunday? They eat the leftovers from during the week on Sunday. And the little children wanted their mom in the kitchen. Our children learn a lot from seeing us slave over a hot stove, clean an endless amount of dirty dishes. It never ends. And my heart goes out to mothers that it's 365 days of the year. And there's not very much appreciation, especially as they're young. But you know what, as they get older, it changes. It changes. My kids are all married now, and now I have my grandkids that come, and our kitchen is a happy place. The kitchen is the heart of the home. And if we're not finding joy in feeding our family, and if we're not taking the time, we're doing something wrong. So then the next part of the book is part 3, and it's about feeding our neighbors and understanding how the power of the atonement of Christ lifts us up to that task. I want to share a short story with you about, it's the guiding star principle. Okay, so one of my friends, I went to an event. It was right when I was writing the book, actually. I went to an event, and one of my friends shared this story with me. She said in her great-great-great-grandmother's journal, she had written this story. An angel of God appeared to her and gave her a gift. And the gift was a guiding star. And every time her great-great-grandmother saw that guiding star, she knew who to minister to. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be cool? I want one of those. So after she told me that, I literally went home. Every day I prayed, Heavenly Father, can I get a guiding star? Can you please give me a guiding star? And one day, I was in our church, and you know what sacrament is, right? Yeah, I was in our church, and I was passing a sacrament, and the Spirit told me, Brad, the sacrament is the guiding star. So you think about that covenant we make. And I could talk about this openly because pretty much every faith has a sacrament. And it's the same covenant regardless of your faith, right? It's the same covenant. The covenant is we take that bread or water and remember him, and we covenant to keep his commandments. And what does he give us in return? His Spirit to be with us. What do we need his Spirit for? To know who to minister to. Every gift we're given, the purpose of every gift we have is to bless other people. And so he gives us the Spirit so we literally know in our neighborhoods who to minister to. And I get up in the morning and I'll just ask the question, Heavenly Father, who do I need to feed today? And you know, we get so complacent we don't think about the sweet little lady next door. She goes out, she does everything she needs to do, so we think she's perfectly okay. There's a sister in our neighborhood, her name is Paula, and I take her food, and one day she looked at me and she said, why do you bring me food? And she's kind of crotchety, right? And I just looked at her and I said, well, don't you get tired of your own cooking? And she went, oh yes, thank you so much. She was so grateful that I thought to bring herself, even though she's perfectly capable of cooking for herself, she loved the fact that someone thought about that. And we don't think about that. Even couples, older couples in our neighborhood, we think that they're okay, so we don't think about bringing them food. It's not even, they don't even have to like our food. What is the message we're giving them when we bring food to a door? That they're loved. Yeah, that they're thought about. And that is so important. So this is one of my Chef Brad tips I have in the book. And all of you right now can do this. Go on Amazon or to the restaurant supply store and get a big stack of those styrofoam big clam containers. You know the kind when you go out to eat and you get your food to go home in? Get some of those. Put them in your pantry. and use them. I guarantee you, everyone in here could tell me that they throw away a lot of food. You make food, and you put it in the refrigerator, think you're going to eat it later, and what happens? You don't eat it. So how wonderful would it be if when you fix that meal, you grab one of those clam containers, you put it in there, and you don't have to worry about getting your dish back, and you hand this to one of your little children and say, take it to the neighbor 3 doors down. Isn't that so simple? It's so simple. Another one I put in there is on Amazon, order a stack of pizza boxes. And then when you make homemade pizza for your family, how hard is it to make one more extra pizza? And how often do you have just one pizza left over of dough that you don't know what to do with? Roll it out, make a pizza, put it in a box, and take it to the neighbor. The neighbors love it. The neighbors love it. It's a beautiful way to minister. We don't think about that. So then, that's part 3. I am passionate about feeding my neighbors. I had this one sister in my neighborhood. I'll tell you this short story. I called her. Well, I woke up one morning, and that voice, the Spirit said, you need to take food to this family today. And I was like, okay. So I called all day long, no answer. And I thought, well, that wasn't the Spirit, evidently, but I'm going to call one more time. So I called once more, and this sister doesn't like anyone to serve her, by the way. So she answered the phone, and I said, oh, Carolyn, this is Brad. I need your help. What do you need? Well, I just need to know that you'll help me. Well, you know, Daryl, this husband, he's not very well, and there's not much we can do. Oh, I understand that perfectly. I just need you to tell me that you will help me. I need your help. She said, of course, anything. What do you need? I need you to let me bring you dinner tonight. And she started laughing. She said, okay. So I took dinner, walked in her home. She said, you really tricked me, didn't you? And I did trick her. But you know what? I found out later that she was really in a rough place. She needed that meal because her husband was in a wheelchair. Their son had just died. They were going to Washington for memorial service the next day, and she was trying to figure out how to get her husband on an airplane and get in the service, and she hadn't even thought about dinner. But the Spirit knew, didn't it? That guiding star knew exactly who needed to be fed that day, so it always works. Okay, so now, the 4th part of the book is about feeding the community. And when I talk about community, and I'll ask this question, when was the last time you invited someone in your home that's not a member of your church, or is from a different culture, or a different religion? I hope you do that once in a while. Oh my goodness, the experiences you have when you open your home up to community. I have learned how to pray differently. I have learned how to worship differently. I mean, we had a family in our home this last year. They were from Pakistan, and I'd met them, and I'm pretty bold about when I meet people like that. I just walked up to them and I said, hey, you guys, we would love for you to cook for us. How about if you come to my house, we'll have all the ingredients, and you come and cook food from your country. They were Muslims from Pakistan, and they were like, okay. So they told me I had to buy kosher chicken, so I did, and they came, and oh my goodness, it was so much fun preparing the food with them. It was absolutely wonderful. So then we gathered around the table, and I didn't want to offend them, but I really wanted to bless the food. So I just asked them, I said, how do you bless the food in your country? And they said, oh, we just raise our hands high above our head and say, thank you, God. And so that night around my dinner table, I had Mormons, I had Christians, I had Muslims, and I even had an agnostic gay man there around my dinner table. And we all raised our hands high above our head, and we said, thank you, God. And it was so beautiful. It was just so beautiful to share, and to share their faith with them. It was a beautiful experience. They had just been, I don't know if you know this about Muslims and Mecca. Mecca is the holiest of holy places for them to go to. And you know, in the Middle Eastern countries, they have a lottery to be able to go to Mecca. And if they go once in their lifetime during Holy Week, it's considered a huge blessing from God. This family that was at my dinner table had just been to Mecca. And it was so beautiful to hear of their story of faith and how much that meant to them. So it's just such a beautiful experience when you open up our home to the community. One more little story, and then we'll stop so that we can do the drawing. So during COVID, I taught classes online. And in our neighborhood, we have a Catholic priest who was from India. And so Father KK is his name. And so I was doing a whole class on Indian food one night. And I didn't know Father KK, but one of my neighbors walked the trail and he would see Father KK in the morning. So he stopped him and he said, "Hey, Father, we have this chef in our neighborhood and he's cooking Indian food. Why don't you come over and try out his food?" And this Catholic priest was like, okay. So he shows up to my house on Tuesday night at 7:30, loves my Indian food, and we just click like brothers. All the rest of COVID, for like over a year and a half, he was in my home every Tuesday night for dinner. We became the best of friends. One Sunday I was speaking in my church, and I told him, "Father, I'm talking in church Sunday. Do you want to come?" And he was like, "Absolutely." So he shows up to our church. And then he said something was going on in his church. So we went and supported him. And one Sunday he moved up to Salt Lake. So one Sunday, I got up one Sunday morning, my wife was out of town, and it was like, do I go to Mass today or do I go to church? And the Spirit was like, go to Mass. So I get up and I drive up to Salt Lake, and he was so happy to see me there. He even waved for me from the pulpit and called my name out from the pulpit. He was so happy. And then this is what he did. At the end of Mass, he had everyone stand up and he thanked the choir and the music. And then he said, "Brad, would you raise your hand?" I was like, "What?" So I raised my hand and he told the entire congregation, "This is my Mormon friend from my old neighborhood in Orem. He drove up here today to support me in my new calling." And right then the Spirit told me I was exactly where I needed to be. My heart aches for those of you that aren't brave enough to invite other faiths or other people in your homes. You're missing out. Try it. Or even visiting other faiths. It's so beautiful to break bread with people that might think differently than we think or have a different way of looking at things. That's what's so powerful about bread. You think about Christ, how often did he feed them physically before he fed them spiritually? That was important, wasn't it? And the same thing applies to us. When we learn how to feed our neighbors physically, we connect spiritually. It's just a given that's going to happen. It's just such a beautiful principle. So anyway, that's my little lecture for you tonight. Step out of your comfort zone. Seek that guiding star in your life. We all have it. We all have that guiding star. Every one of us have the blessings of being guided by the Spirit. And it's all we have to do is ask, who do I feed today? Who can I take a loaf of bread to? My wife, she served in the Relief Society president in our ward, and she'd come home and she'd say, "Oh, we just can't get into that family's home at all." And I would always look at her, "You're doing it wrong. You've been married to me long enough. Don't you know how to do it?" And I'd go in the kitchen and throw together a meal and knock on the door and come back 3 hours later, "Where have you been?" "I've been down visiting with that wonderful family." "How did you get in?" "Duh, food." It'll get you in any door in the neighborhood. Just take a warm loaf of bread. Anyone will let you in without fail. Food is so powerful. You think about the children of Israel and how God fed them manna. He has the power to do that, right? But he doesn't do that because of how important food is in our daily life, in connecting and bringing our families together, bringing our neighborhoods together, bringing our communities together. Think about how you can create community around food. One of the things that I do in my home, I did it in Arizona for 8 years, and we've started up here, is we call it Third Sunday Dinner. I have a friend who lives in Provo. Third Sunday didn't work for her, so she does Third Friday Pizza Night. And she's done it for probably 10 years. Every third Friday of the month, her home is open for anyone in the neighborhood. And you know what? This is so fun because I've showed up at her house on Third Friday, and sometimes I've taken like 10 or 12 of my friends with me. And we just walk in, and she has this little tiny house, and we're just crowded in there, and it's so beautiful. And a lot of times we think we can't have people in our home because it's not nice enough. Or when we did it in Arizona, our entire house was 1,200 square feet. Our kitchen, I think is what happened when they built the house. They finished the house, and then they walked through and they went, "Oh my goodness, we forgot to put a kitchen in this house. This closet will work perfectly. Our kitchen was so small, and you know how many people I fed out of that kitchen? The largest group was 227 people showed up at my house for dinner. So it's not the size of our house that matters, and it's not about the money either, because you know what? What always goes out the front door comes back in the back door, without fail. My wife, she's a money stressor in our home, and she would always stress about, we can't afford to feed these people. But it always, always worked out.
You know, I live in France, and the French are very private. They're not like, come over, and we were having council in church and trying to figure out how can we create more friendship in the ward. And I said, how about doing third Sunday, you know, dinner after church? So we do that. So we've been doing it for 4 years.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Missionaries can bring people, and people from other faiths come, and they're like, oh, today is the dinner day at, you know, with the Mormons. And
I love that.
it was beautiful.
I love that. I'll have to tell you, I'm embarrassed about this, but I used to laugh about the Methodists and their coffee after church and their donuts. What a beautiful principle. We should serve cocoa and donuts. I mean, one of my family, they live up in Washington. I just met them like 3 years ago. It was my grandfather's first wife's posterity. And I didn't even know he existed. And my daughter and wife found him on whatever they look on the computer. So I went up and I met him, and they're all Christians, and I went to their Christian church. Oh my goodness, it was one of the best experiences. My cousin, his job, his calling in the church was the soft serve ice cream machine. Wasn't that beautiful? And we wonder why they do that. It creates community. It creates community. People feel welcomed and loved. So I'll just tell you, I changed my third Sunday dinner the way I did in Arizona. Now I do it, but it's third Sunday dinner waffle themed. So I do waffles. So a little while back we did corn on the cob and waffles. It was fantastic. Last month we did pumpkin waffles. This month I'm doing sage waffles with smoked turkey and buttermilk syrup. So yeah, so it's fun. Third set.
What's your address?
I'll show you what I do for my third Sunday dinner. There you go. Come on over. We just invite anybody. I mean, we never know who's going to show up to third Sunday dinner. When I used to teach at Education Week, and I would talk about third Sunday dinner, and I can't tell you in Arizona how many people coming through Mesa, Arizona on the third Sunday would call and say, can we come to dinner? And we never, it was okay. It doesn't matter. We're creating community. And it's those memories. Food creates memories that just last forever. It's such a beautiful thing. So I encourage all of you to step out of your comfort zone and create community through food, whatever it takes. And we can all, if you're doing stuff, we can all do better. I'm constantly trying to improve what I'm doing and trying to do better. So just tap into that guiding star and have fun with food. And my book is available on Amazon. I'm sorry I don't have any to sell here, but you can get it on Amazon. And it really is. The recipes in it, one of the best recipes in here is my grandfather's deep fried French toast. When you try it, it changes your world of French toast. It's absolutely amazing. But there's a lot of great recipes in here. Oh, and the other thing, let me take one more moment. One of the things I've learned when you bring people into your home is to have them cook. So when we moved into our current neighborhood now, we did it 5 times before COVID started. And by the time COVID got there, we knew everyone in our neighborhood because we had 60 people at a time, 5 times, to our home for dinner. And this is how I did it. I would set up stations in my kitchen, and I've done it in little tiny spaces and great big spaces. It doesn't matter. And in each station, I would have a recipe and everything they needed in that station to cook the recipe. So like if it's a Mexican one, this station is for the refried beans. Everything they needed to the beans were there. If they needed the stove, it was by the stove. Salsa was over here, guacamole over here. So everyone comes in, they cook together, and one of the rules I have is when you're done cooking your recipe, clean up the area and clean the dishes, because there's always a little bit of time while someone else is finished it. And by the time you sit down for dinner, it's beautiful. There aren't very many dishes, and I found people sit longer and connect longer when they cook together. So in the book are actually 3 hands-on dinner parties, Mexican, Americano, and Italian. And they're complete with the recipes. You scan a QR code, and you can print out the recipes and have your own hands-on dinner party.
Does it have your bread recipe that everybody was talking about?
No, you have to go to my website for that.
Oh my.
So anyway, thank you so much. And I just want to give a plug for this kind of store. You know, these kind of stores do not survive without you. Be sure and support them. You know, you don't get this kind of support on Amazon or even Walmart. So these stores are great, and I love these stores and all the hard work they put in. And you walk in and you could ask them a question and they have an answer for you. Try getting help at Walmart. I don't mean to dish Walmart, but really, they really don't know what they're doing there most of the time. But anyway, these stores are important. Spread the word, help them keep doing the beautiful work they're doing. And so thank you so much for letting me come.